everyone, this is Desiree, and this is part 1 for the Simon Says 10 Card 1 kit for November of 2017. So again, this will show the first 5 cards from this kit. Now this kit had a lot of stickers and cardstock and an extra large stamp set, so it was really cool. So for card 1, I'm going to use the Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, and I'm going to cut my background panel. And then this kit also had these beautiful textured papers. So I used the rectangle die first, and then eventually I'm going to use the scallops. But I saw this panel of the cardstock with all of these letters with vines and everything. So I cut certain letters out. And what it's going to say is thank you. So instead of having a sentiment, I'm actually going to use these letters for the sentiment itself. So I positioned the letters in place to know where I'm going to use, this is the Avery L scalloped border die on top of that textured paper. And that textured paper was like a almost material-like, it was very, very different. So for each of these letters, and you can see I keep changing my mind, I'm definitely going to ink them, but I have my corner rounder here, and I'm just going to round the corners of each of these letters. So they're not going to be perfect. They're going to be very, yes, I'm going to use that term, wonky. So I inked around the edges using the Stampin' Up! Ink Espresso. I'm going to put down a piece of foam tape, and this foam tape, remember, I get from my local Big Lots. Unfortunately, they don't sell it anymore. I wish they did because it's awesome tape. And I'm going to place that textured paper down and then just crinkle up the scallop, because you all know I love my texture on my cards. And then I'm going to take these letters, put them back into position, and I'm going to pop them up using foam squares. I'm going to start with the letter A because I want the thank up on the top centered on this card base. So since it's an odd number of letters for that word, you start with your center letter and then work out from there. And then I'm going to place the U in place. Once I have that done, I'm going to use the dark brown cardstock for my 4 1/4 and 5 1/2 top folding card. And I'm going to set that down in place. Now this will cover the whole base, so this panel also measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And since I used liquid glue, you have some time to wiggle it on top of your card base to make sure that it's on there straight. And that's card number 1. For card number 2, I'm using the panel with the tree, the gold tree that's embossed. So there's that wonky die. I'm going to use that to cut out the tree, and you can see I have it offset to the side. Again, that's more appealing to the eye instead of having it centered. And this is a foam pad, a very thick foam pad. I got this, I guess, about a year ago from Stampin' Up! And the kit also came with these gold leaves, and they have holes at the top and the bottom. So I'm just placing them around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the needle, and I've threaded some gold thread onto this, and I'm just going to puncture through this panel because, yes, you guessed it, I'm actually going to sew these leaves onto this tree. Gives it some dimension, gives it some texture. So I'm going to start from the back, and then once I pull that through, I'm just going to secure this with some regular Scotch tape onto the back of the panel to make sure that doesn't go anywhere. I'm not going to put any knots or anything else in this. And I'm just going to go around and place those leaves and letting them almost be charms, like you would in jewelry making. So once I come through the leaf, I'm going to go back down the same hole to secure that leaf in place. I'm not going to glue the leaf at all. I want that to be loose. I'm going to come up through the next hole and do the same thing. Thread the leaf on and then go back down the same hole and then come up the next hole. I didn't want to use another piercing tool because I didn't want the hole to be bigger than what the needle is that I'm using. I'm using a very fine needle, but any needle will do as long as you can thread it depending upon the string that you're using. So once I have that done, I have it secured again with some Scotch tape. I just trim off the edge, and that's what our panel looks like. I think it's really sharp. I think it's really pretty. I kept on looking at this cardstock. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it, but for some reason those gold leaves, I just saw them hanging off the tray. Using my foam tape, and I'm going to put this down on an ivory card base. Secure that in place. And the kit also came with all of these beautiful stickers. They're really pretty, lots of gold accents. And I'm grabbing the one that says Happy Family. And we're going to set that in place. And that's pretty much it for card 2. One of the things I will say about this kit was the paper really, and these stickers really made some beautiful cards. Very simple. Didn't have to get into too many strong techniques. Very simple. For card number 3, I grabbed this cardstock with the flowers that are very similar to the stamp set. And I used a smaller rectangle wonky die. And I'm using the We Are Family sticker. Now, this isn't sticky right now. And what I did was I used my anti-static tool on the back to remove the stickiness from the sticker. So I'm just placing these items around, and since that one We Are Family sticker had the black and white or the black etching design on it, the sketch, those are the stickers that I'm continuing throughout this card. So I'm going to take this small pink panel and I'm going to pop that up onto some foam tape, and I'm going to set that up in the upper left hand corner. I'm using the darker of the green, excuse me, card base for 4 1/4, 5 1/2 top folding. And now we're just going to set those pieces in place. I'm using my scissors there off to the side to remind me where I want that panel to sit. The other sticker that I'm using, I want that to droop down onto the other side, but I don't want it to extend past the card base. So we're just going to set that in place. And I'm using liquid glue on the one side and foam squares on the other so that it can lay flat. I'm just going to place one foam square in the corner because this is pretty much going to rest on those 2 panels that are already propped up. And then I'm just going to cut a smaller one. Excuse me. Believe it or not, allergies. It's amazing. And just put it underneath that tail so that it doesn't get crushed. This card looks great the way that it is, but I just wanted to grab that smaller one and put that coming up from the back of the 2 panels. You can see sets of 3. So that's why it just didn't look right to me. So now that I've got those 3 black elements, it looks more appealing to my eye now. I grabbed my gold Nouveau drops and I filled in the eggs on the nest, and now I'm just going to set some dots around the card and into the centers of the flowers of the pink panel. That's card number 3. For card number 4, you can see as my finger wiggle there, I cut out the simple block that says hi. I'm using the Lawn Fawn Stitch rectangle, and then the center die is for my favorite things. And what it does is it cuts out the rectangle, but the stitching that's going around the outside of that. You can kind of see it here before I place down my foam tape. And I'm going to put foam tape all along the back of this. I want to mark that opening on the darker green cardstock for my card base, 4 1/4, 5 1/2 top folding. And I just want to mark that so that I know where to put that high panel, because that's pretty much my sentiment. So I'm going to set that centered in place. Now there will be a little bit of the green on the top and a little bit of the green on the bottom. And I was going to leave it that way, but it was starting to bother me. So I'm erasing my lines, and after I placed the panel in place, I was looking at that and I just did not like the green. So again, you can see I'm like, no, I don't like it, and I'm trying to pull this off, and this foam tape's really strong, so we're just going to go with it. And we're going to keep it in place and try not to move that. Yeah. So I'm grabbing the big cluster and I'm going to set that down on the bottom because it matches the cardstock that I chose. And the sticker is coming off the edge, so I'm using my anti-static just to get some powder in there, just to make it so that it doesn't stick. When you mail it, it won't stick down onto that panel. I want to keep the level of it. So now I'm using the separate individual stickers, and I'm going to place them up on the top. So I'm going to use the rose. I'm grabbing some of the daisies. I think there was a couple of those. Some of the leaves. And you can see I'm just covering up that green area as best as I can. And then this final flower is just able to do that. So we've kind of got it going on an angle, but we can still see the simple sentiment that says hi. I grabbed this small butterfly and I'm curling up the wings, but keeping the center flat because that's what I'm going to use to adhere this onto the card. And just set that right above and between those two flowers there. I'm going to grab my Nuvo Drops Morning Dew. These are clear. If there's any enamel dots that you want to get, this is the one to have in your in your stash. To me, it's a staple element because no matter where you put it, it actually turns the color that you have it on top of. I'm taking the card and I'm slapping it down because there was a couple air bubbles in some of those drops that I did. That's card number 4. So for card number 5, I am digging into these awesome textured papers. So I'm using the Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. And you can see I'm just going to have different shapes. So here's the first one that I cut out, and I made sure that flower, the large flower that's embossed in this, is the center point in that top portion. I'm then cutting a rectangle out using the same die out of the silver, which is like a cobblestone, and then this beautiful bronze copper floral design. I cut a piece of black too because I thought that was going to be a base that I was going to build off, and I kind of changed my mind. So now I wanted to rip this paper. There was a video that I saw, Coffee and Card Time, I believe. I'll have her linked below where she did this, and it does. When you rip this, it's almost like fabric. It's got a lot of texture to it. It frays. It gets very fuzzy, these papers. And you all know I love to rip paper. For some reason, just to tear into a piece of paper and the whole concept of mixed media, I like to pull that in. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm using my liquid glue so that it can get into the crevices. I'm keeping the copper, the bronze copper piece solid, but making sure the flowers are shown at the bottom. I'm then adhering the cobblestone, the gray, on top of that. Using an acrylic block to make sure that the glue gets in those crevices to adhere it down. And now I'm finally gluing the ivory floral that I ripped around. Thought about putting that piece back in there and thought against it. So I'm going to use that black cardstock that I used, and I'm going to use the sentiment, "You are kind of amazing." So I'm going to use my gold. I believe this was gold, either gold or champagne. I'll make sure I have it written down. Excuse me. And I heat set that, and now I'm just trimming. It's better to have it too big of a piece because I want to push this up underneath that tear from the silver. So I'm just trimming a little away each time as I set it in place so that it can just come up below that silver piece. And then of course I'm going to rip the bottom of this piece as well to continue that effect going down. And I'm going to use my liquid my art glitter glue, kind of stumbling there, to set this in place. And then I'll trim off the sides to make it even with the card base. Again, using my foam tape. I used a lot of foam tape in this. and setting that on the dark brown card base. Adding does not need anything else. And that's the final card for this video. As I said, these are the cards that we made in this video, close-ups. Part 2 will be coming out very soon. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button now to stay up to date. There's so many more videos coming out. I believe I'm going to create a series of the simplicity of card making, back to the basics. I had made one just using pattern paper, and I think it was really well received. I think I'm going to continue that. Already have a project lined up for that. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. If you have any questions, just leave a comment down below. As I said before, the products that I use will also be listed below. And remember, everyone, always be creative.